So today I'm going to be reviewing Red Seas Under Red Skies. Red Seas Under Red Skies is Scott Lynch's second book in the Gentleman Bastards sequence. In the description box below, I'm going to post a link to my review of The Lies of Locke Lamora, the first book in the Gentleman Bastards sequence, just so you can see my thoughts on the first one. Hilariously, it's amazing how much my channel has sort of changed and hasn't changed, because it was 2 years ago now, 2 years ago since I read the first one, and yeah, I was a lot more calmer back then. And actually, what might be quite fun is if you get a chance to check out that first review of The Lies of Locke Lamora, which I suggest you do before checking out this review. Yeah, what do you think as a comparison? Do you prefer me being a little bit more energetic, or do you prefer back then when things were a bit more chill? Let me know. I mean, I'm not going to change the way I do things, but still, it would just be good to know. So the story of Red Seas Under Red Skies picks up pretty much 2 years after the events of the first novel. Our two protagonists, Jean and Locke, have fled their old home and ended up in a new city called Tal Verrar. No idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. They have both taken on new identities, as is their way. They are con artists, thieves, and they always like to change their identities when they go into any new city, and they have sort of set themselves up as professional gamblers. And they have got a target in their sights, the opulent but very deadly casino called the Sinspire. Their plan, like many of their plans in this series, is pretty ambitious. They want to try and con their way into the vault which is deep beneath the Sinspire. But as their plan starts to unfold, they get sort of embroiled in something a lot more bigger, and I mean a lot bigger and grander than the heist they had planned. They are pretty much forced into naval warfare and piracy. They are pressed into commanding a ship, and they have to sail across dangerous, oh so dangerous seas. All at the same time navigating multiple betrayals and mortal danger. It's like the first book, but this time it's at sea. Structurally, the novel retains a lot of the same sort of mechanisms as the first. There are lots of little interludes, and especially in the first half of this novel, sort of flashbacks that sort of jump around time, showing us like how Jean and Locke got to where they are. It covers Locke's recovery and also them getting their new identities. And then we have this sort of like slow build up to the sort of planning and hopeful execution of the Sinspire heist. However, and here is a big however, the structure massively diverts halfway through this novel. So halfway through this novel, you're thinking to yourself, oh, this is quite a lot like the first novel, except there's a much smaller crew. Except this time it's just Jean, it's just Locke. Yeah, but then, I mean, we hit halfway point and then, pa-chow! The tone and the setting just dramatically shift. What begins as this sort of con heist of a casino quickly turns into this like high sea adventure pirate novel. Now, I will be repeating this again in my cons, but that is a drastic shift. For some, if this novel had started, it's a big novel, if this novel had started off and like, you know, a quarter of the way through, all of a sudden we're on the high seas and it's a pirate novel and I'm like, oh, this is a pirate adventure. Okay, I would be so much more down with it. But it's the fact that you're nearly halfway into this novel, halfway through this huge novel, that it decides to suddenly say, no, I'm not that novel anymore. I'm not that book anymore. I'm a completely different book. It almost feels like the second novel is beginning halfway through this. And like the first novel could have been maybe like a little side novel, a little novella that sort of links between the two, book one and book two. I don't know, but it just feels like the second novel begins halfway through. So the first part of this novel is, as I said, dealing with stuff we already know that's familiar to the first novel, kind of cunning social maneuvers and sort of schemes and plotting and that kind of thing. And yeah, the second part is relying on sort of naval training, which I did think was really, really funny. There's a great character, an absolutely brilliant character, who teaches them all about what it's like to captain a ship, because they have to learn and train to captain their own pirate ship and their own crew, and it is brilliant. Like, it's absolutely brilliant. It's so much fun, and the character who teaches them what he teaches them, I never realised cats were so important on ships. It's just, it is all gold. And I'm not going to lie, I think it is an incredibly smart decision for that to be what this book is about, because it sets it so firmly apart from the first one. It makes it its own thing. Again, I just wish I hadn't read half of another book to then all of a sudden be thrown into another book. Why aren't more people talking about this? It's themage time! Ho ho, it's themage! So of course, friendship and loyalty remain at the heart of this story. It's all about Jean and Locke. It always has been. Their friendship, what they go through together, the friends they make along the way, the people they fall in love with, the people they kill. It's them two at the heart of this. I would also say that this book is now looking at the idea of identity and sort of reinvention for these two characters. And they're kind of at the point in their lives where they're thinking to themselves, Do we want to be doing this forever? We love what we do, but do we want to do one like last big con and set ourselves up on a different path? It's starting to explore those kind of things. I would say it's also looking at corruption and the influence of corruption on politics. Next up after that, I'd say we're looking at survival and resilience, especially when we start looking at the kind of the second half of the book, set on the high seas, the pirate stuff, and what the crew have to go through, the rules of their lives and how they live their lives. And finally, I would say, just like the first novel, we are looking at the ideas of deception versus truth, and we're sort of playing that game all the way through. So I'm not going to go too deep into the characters. Of course, we have Locke and Jean. They are very much like they are in the first novel. Jean is very much the fighter. He's the stronger one, more strong-willed, whereas Locke is definitely the more witty, the more humorous, I would say. They're both very smart, but the smarter of the two. But he's the one who seems to be able to always slip his way out of any situation he's in. He's an incredible thief. He's got nifty fingers, everybody. Oh, nifty fingers. And next up, I'm going to keep things very, very vague because I'm feeling very, very lazy, but it might add a bit of mystery for you. But basically, there's some love interests in there. There's captains of ships. There's captains of ships who teach them how to captain ships. We have a couple of nasty antagonists, especially the casino owner, who gets a really good bit of backstory, actually. We have some cats. Oh, we got some cats. And that's about it. And then I suppose various other sort of people they meet along the way. But that's about it. It's got all the trappings of a good sort of fantasy adventure. Again, it's very light on any sort of magic in this world. There is barely any in it whatsoever. Right, this is a pretty rumbly, jumbly, tumbly review, but I'm going to try and get things back on track. So let's go into what did I like and what didn't I like. What I liked. So the first thing I really liked about this novel is the pirate adventure that we go on. I thought it was a really smart and really fun way to sort of keep these characters building, but to engage with these characters in a sort of setting that they are not familiar with, to put these two incredibly smart, because Locke is so smart, and by now we know Locke can get himself out of any situation, and Jean is so strong and such a good fighter that we know that he can always sort of fight his way out of any situation. Together, they're pretty much unstoppable. But what's really smart is going, okay, so how do we make these two feel really vulnerable, like there's genuine risk involved? And it is put them in an environment that they don't know much about. So sticking them on a ship creates like loads of humour, but also ups the stakes a little bit. It's a smart decision. Well played. The next thing I really enjoyed is the sort of bond between Jean and Locke. It remains really sort of like resonant. I really love their relationship. I love the back and forth between the two of them. They're just great characters. Next thing I really liked is the world building. The world building's solid. It manages to sort of do what all great fantasy adventure novels should do, is it builds the world without info dumping in any way whatsoever. It allows the characters and the situations and the narrative at play to sort of keep things moving, and within that moving process we are also learning about the world, and the world is getting built around us. That's how you do it. That's how it should be done. Never trust a book that just relies on an opening chapter that just vomits everything at you. Next thing I really liked is I like the high stakes. I like the complexity. I like the layers involved. It does, as this novel builds, it jumps back and forth to start and then it becomes a little bit more linear. And I do like how layered the sort of, it's like a heist. Then there's sort of a revenge plot going on. And then there's another sort of revenge plot going on, all whilst still trying to continue the heist. It's layered, people, and I liked it. Next thing I really enjoyed is there is genuine character growth for both Jean and Locke. The next thing I really liked is, for the most part, other than the halfway, midway switch thing, the mix of genres with the heist sort of being in the background of the pirate adventure and all those things, I think is layered really nicely. It makes this novel unique. It makes it interesting. Yeah, I liked how sort of layered plot-wise it was. And finally, and I do feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit, but the characters always feel human in the sort of adventure that's taking place. There is an emotional realism at play within this novel that sort of blends really nicely with the fantasy and the adventure and the humour. I think Scott Lynch just does those things incredibly well. They existed in the first novel and they are just grown and built upon in this novel. What didn't I like? So I've mentioned it about 1,000 times already. Why not one more time? So the halfway shift was very jarring for me. And I didn't like it at all. I really, really did not like it. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit of a square man and I need to be more postmodern, man. But I don't know, when it comes to my fantasy adventure novels, I just found that midway shift insane. Like, I could see why maybe as you're writing it, like, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to do something they're not going to expect. All of a sudden, halfway through, this is going to become a pirate adventure novel. Bam! Blow your brains, you know what I mean? Like, kind of, but it didn't work for me. It did not work for me. Again, I have to repeat, I enjoyed both halves of this novel in their own right. I really, really did. The piratey adventure stuff is great. The heisty stuff before it is great. It's just the two of them smashed together in the same novel is what didn't work for me. Next thing I didn't quite like is the sort of cleverness, the sort of long con, sort of building layered Ocean's 11-y type thing, which is so evident in the first novel, is definitely diluted in this one. And it's diluted because we go on this pirate adventure, but I did find myself missing that a little bit. I will also say that because of some of the tonal shifts, some of the sort of deaths or losses or shifts that happen in the narrative maybe don't land as powerfully as they could because of that tonal imbalance. And my final dislike is some of the secondary characters I feel like could have been developed a lot more. There's a couple of characters that we meet on there's a pirate ship and then something happens and they end up on another pirate ship. I don't want to give too many things away. But there's a couple of characters on there who we really start to get some growth and development with, who I really started to really enjoy as characters. I thought they were both great. If this novel had been a sort of a pirate adventure story from earlier on, from like the start, I think I would have, and they would have had so much more time to be developed. And I think I would have really, really cared about them. And the stakes would have been higher for them as well. But as it is, with how things are, some of those secondary characters are just a bit like, oh, okay. Because they don't have the time given to them. But there you go. That's it for my cons. So overall, I think that Red Seas Under Red Skies is a really ambitious and worthy sequel that I very much enjoyed. I thought it was very good to, in some moments, excellent. I believe in my first review, I said, like, as a fantasy book, The Lies of Locke Lamora is like 5 stars. If you love fantasy, it's a 5-star fantasy book. I think I said if I'm putting it in the context of just like literature in general, and I don't know why I seem to segregate, but I do, I said it's probably more like a 4-star excellent. I would say this is just behind, for me, The Lies of Locke Lamora. I would say this is like a 3.5 to 4-star sort of thing. It's very good and in some moments excellent. It's just not quite hitting heights for me of the enjoyment of the first. But I do have to say that it has been over 2 years since I read the first. I've dived into this. I didn't do any kind of recap on the first one. I just went for it, and it all came back to me because the writing's so good. Like, Scott Lynch is just, I was as soon as I was in that world again, I was like, oh yeah, this is all coming back to me now. Even after 2 years, and I think that says a lot. I do think this series is held up in quite high regard as being like one of the better sort of fantasy series out there, and I don't disagree. It's excellent. And I have absolutely no idea if I'm going to wait another 2 years until I read the third one. I'm just trying to sort of stretch them out, but not to the point in which I completely forget everything. It's just that Scott Lynch is meant to be writing another one. I don't know what happened, and if anyone's really clued into these things, let me know in the comments below. I think he broke up with his wife, or him and his wife split, and he was not doing well mental health wise, and was just unable to write. And I think he still might be unable to write. These things affect us in many different ways and can completely strip us of our creativity and our will to sort of do what we enjoyed and what we were passionate about. So I have no idea if we've got a 4th book coming, but I was sort of slow playing this and not rushing through it in the hopes that if I go a little bit slower, that by the time I get round to the 3rd book, a 4th one might be on its way. I might just have to, bite the bullet and accept that maybe we'll never get a 4th book and I should just jump into the 3rd one to sort of get it done. But we'll see. Again, if anyone out there knows anything, if you've got your ear to the ground, if you're in any Reddit groups, subreddit groups, and they've got the info, then let me know down below. I'm sure all of us would be intrigued to know if there's anything coming our way. So there you go. Have you read Red Seas Under Red Skies? And if so, what did you think about it? Did you love this novel? Did you hate it? Do you prefer the first one to this one? Or do you prefer this one to the first one? And if you have read all 3, what's your general ranking on all 3? Let me know below. And yeah, I hope you're enjoying whatever you might be reading, and I'll see you all on the next one.